doesn't do any blending at all. There's no blending going on, even though we're using a blend mode. All Photoshop is doing is keeping the darkest colors. It's not blending any of the colors between the layers. It's just throwing out everything that's light. So this is the perfect one that we want, because as you can see, we've only got like one little problem area right here that we can fix with a layer mask, or just moving, you know, our man around. So I'm going to go ahead and double click our dude to make him editable, and I'm going to grab my move tool and I'm going to scoop him down a little bit away from the disco ball.
Exactly.
So instead of adding color, you're adding sort of brightness or light.
Right, because it's based on the color model of HSL or HSB, the hue, which color it is, the saturation, how much color do you have, and the luminance, how much lightness is in it, okay? And as a color gets darker, you're always going to have less saturation, less color, okay? And so that's, and as it gets lighter, you're going to have less hue. So there's always this trade-off. That's why I sort of use both, a little more luminance, a little less saturation, and have that trade-off.
Thanks.
Okay? Now don't try to stump the speaker, because it's not polite. If you're going to do that, we'll like talk off in the back, in the corner, where I really like my standard file. So let's say I think that's a little too heavy, a little too blue, and I want to lighten it up. It's going to act like a regular copy, and I can also go photo, edit in, choose it, and it's going to come in Photoshop. I can export the virtual copy, I can print the virtual copy, I can do anything, build websites about it, anything. That's what makes it really interesting. Because what do we do in the old days in Photoshop, right? Work non-destructively, work non-destructively. So the first thing you do was like, duplicate the background layer. Well, that was great until we got like 21 megapixel cameras. You know, where you're like, oh man, it's starting to get heavy. So virtual copy is just a reference, it's just a text document. So you can work really quick, really light, really fast, and there's no hit to your hard drive. It's sort of magic, right? One thing that you'd want to point out, because of this, how nice the idea of virtual copies are, and then let's say I didn't have these here, because I had it in a different folder, and be like, wow, I really like that look. How did I do that? Right, you've had that? Like, this is really great. What did I do? Oh, and you're supposed to write down everything you do? Just like we were supposed to write down exposure and f-stop to enter into photo competitions? Did you notice everything is always shot at 1/120th f8? Even if the water's smooth? Anyway. I always wondered about that. The beautiful thing about Lightroom, the metadata is, look, everything I did to this file is here in the history, even though I worked on that last week. Okay? So I can always get back. Let me jump out of the, and then get back to where I was. Look at this, I'm going through the entire history of that file. So I can actually say, oh, what was my clarity setting? I can just click on it and go to my basic, and everything's still there. So that's just a beautiful idea. Now that's not exactly virtual copies, but the history feature and virtual copies in Lightroom are very related, that it maintains that flexibility at all times.